So like I said, a lot of my career in US journalism really has been at that intersection of editorial and technology. How do we help journalists do more journalism? How do we help that go faster? And so at Google, part of my job is getting to work on tools like this to bring the best of Google's AI and search technology to help journalists do their jobs better. So, introducing Pinpoint. What does it do? It's a research tool that helps journalists analyze large collections of documents. You'll see as we go through that each collection can handle about 200,000 plus documents, depending on file size. But as it's sort of an ongoing experiment, and so we're always happy to talk with people who need more space, which is always a thing. All right, Pinpoint can help you with investigative reporting, but actually can also help with some things you might not immediately think of when you think of large document analysis. So, breaking news, audio and video transcriptions, fact-checking, collecting notes, and searching archives. So, I would like to talk to you about some of the features, some of which you'll be familiar with, and also some new Gen AI features that we've actually just recently released, and then go through some case studies, some success stories from your journalism colleagues around the world who've been able to use Pinpoint. I should mention, ooh, that went too fast. I should mention that it's available in multiple languages and different regions as well. So, of course, available here in Argentina in Spanish. Okay, the features we'll go through. So, searching, transcription, extracting structured data, collaboration, and then also the new generative AI features. All right, searching through thousands of documents. So, like I said, 200,000, give or take few, per collection. You can go through different kinds of documents. Now, a lot of these are probably ones that seem very familiar to you. The one that I find most interesting here is actually email archives. Has anyone had to go through an email archive before? It's extremely painful if you've ever had to do it, but Pinpoint actually can easily help you search through those. So the first thing about Pinpoint is really being able to bring the best of Google search into your document. So once you upload something into a collection, you'll be able to see here. So we've got our collections here. There are private collections. There are also public collections from different news organizations like the Associated Press or La Nación as well that you can use. Here's a collection about NASA documents. So you can see that it's actually converted them to a lot of PDFs. And on the right-hand side, you can actually see that it's also brought out using the Google Knowledge Graph, the most commonly mentioned people, organizations, and locations. This is really helpful for you to just get a really quick idea of what is in your document collection. I also used to work in political journalism, so I find zip codes and locations to be extremely helpful and very interesting when you're trying to track different pieces of information or campaign donations, for example. All right, so as you go through, you can see you can search by date as well, and you can see here that there are terms. We've searched for Neil Armstrong, who's a famous American astronaut. You can see that it's actually also highlighted exactly where his name appears in which document. You can click on those documents and easily go through all of those mentions. Also, because we use Google Search, you can actually do advanced search. So searching for a term like orchestra is actually going to come back with synonyms related. So you search for orchestra, it'll also turn back philharmonic. If we're on the space theme, if you search for moon, it will also return lunar. Now, of course, you can use advanced search, put those quotes around it, it'll give you the exact word, say lunar, if you're only looking for that word. Next up, and I should mention this too, Pinpoint actually came out in 2020. And one of the great things about it was that it actually was one of the first tools that put AI technology into the hands of reporters who didn't have a lot of technical skills. So the next feature I'm going to show you is using computer vision technology and optical character recognition. And really the way that I describe this is that I told you we could search through different photos and images. So if you have a picture of animals, it doesn't necessarily identify which animals those are to you. But if it does say, like, I am a panda, it's going to show you that on the screen. So here we can look, this is actually a NASA collection. So STDN's actually the name of a role title at NASA. And you can see here, once we've searched for it, it's actually now shown up on this nameplate highlighted in green. It's going to play again. Well, you'll see it says STDN. So this is really helpful. We've seen people use it, for example, when they're looking at old military photos and trying to locate particular individuals on their name tags. They've been able to see that. In the US, we saw a news organization use it to look at old archival photos of hurricane damage and different street names to try to identify those photos that were relevant to those stories. All right, another great thing, how many of you have gone through documents and there's been handwriting in them? It's been very difficult to read. Right, Pinpoint does a great job at reading handwriting. It does great handwriting, and also government documents are sometimes copied upside down or sideways. They never get them to you like particularly organized. So actually you can see here, we've searched for a term and it's actually picked it up in handwriting as well. So you see the word budget. You can click here where it's highlighted, you can see it right there. All right, transcription and audio, one of our most popular features where, let's see if we can show this. So it automatically transcribes your uploaded text. If you see those blue plays, you can actually just skip to those time codes if you just want to listen to that piece of it. It's also editable as well. So while we do use our Google technology, which we find to be very accurate, if there's something that you want to change, you absolutely can do that within the transcript, and it'll change it within your own collection. All right. Transform similarly structured tables. So how many of you have had to go through government documents or any documents and then take a table and put it so that you can like edit and do your own analysis? It can be very difficult if you don't know Python or you don't have somebody in your newsroom who can do it. With Pinpoint, you actually can do this quite easily. So you can see here in this example, I've got basically several documents about the largest cities in a whole bunch of different countries. And so what you can do is say I had a collection of 50 different countries. I can actually highlight this data. So you can see here. I'm going to highlight the data by population. You can see that. It's going to extract I can label it. I'm going to be able to, then on the bottom, can you see it's actually automatically generated this table for me right here that then I can actually go extract. I can extract it into a CSV file or something like that, and then I can easily analyze it from there. All right. Journalism is very much a team sport, so we know how important collaboration is. So you can share documents with your colleagues. I'll show you examples of how some teams have used this before with highlighting and tagging different pieces of content people can work on. All right, let's get to the newly released generative AI features. Now these are available in different countries, available here in Argentina. You do need to apply for early access to it as a journalist. All right, so the first one is explaining selected text in the document. So I think there are a lot of different generative AI tools out there. Of course, there's Notebook LM, which one of my colleagues will be showcasing, I think later today or tomorrow. And that tool is a very good tool, particularly if you're looking for output. Obviously, the podcast feature is quite famous. But for Pinpoint, we really focus on journalist-specific needs and research needs that need to happen. And so here, I don't know why that happened. Let's see. Okay, here you can see we've actually got some documents about dogs. This one's about a very popular corgi. And you can actually click in here with Gemini and Pinpoint. You can ask all the questions that you would sort of expect that you could ask an LLM. So you can ask to talk a little bit more about specific passages. And the thing here is you can see these sort of purple reference points here as well. We know how important fact-finding, fact verification is, particularly for journalists. And so this allows you to go directly back to that passage within whatever document that the LLM is actually pulling that information from so that you can go and verify it yourself. All right, moving to the next one. Okay, asking questions in a different language than the original text. So this happens a lot when you get, it happens a lot when you get different documents. So you can see that these are English language documents, but you can actually see that the query is in Spanish. We'll actually pull that information out in Spanish. If you want to go verify it, it'll be in the original English text as well. Labeling documents. Like I said, journalism, team sport. A lot of times when you've got 200,000 plus documents, it can be really difficult to go back and figure out where you are, where certain facts were, et cetera. So labeling documents you've always had to do manually, but now with Gemini and Pinpoint, you can actually have that done automatically. You can set your own criteria, and it'll automatically start labeling different things in that collection. So we are very excited about this feature. We talked about transforming structured data, right, where you get a lot of charts and graphs back, and you need to put those into something that you can export and then analyze quickly. Well, with Gemini and Pinpoint now, you can actually transform unstructured data. So here, if I've got all of these documents about different dog breeds, I can actually then put in the query saying data extraction, put into a chart the breed name, explanation of the breed's name, types of behavior, etc. And then it can actually generate an Excel file for me right away just off of unstructured data within here. All right, another thing, this is a very popular request, is create a timeline. And so Gemini and Pinpoint has helped unlock this. You can actually generate this chronological list. It's actually determining what the date is in the timeline based on the document. So before, we only had certain reference points like when was the document created, or if it's a specific letter, do we know what the date is? But now with an LLM is actually very good at inferring what those dates are and can create a timeline of your documents. These are really helpful if you're going through a lot of different court cases. Sometimes if you're also looking at different legislation, you can actually start tracking different versions of the bill. All right. Really, too, we know one of the most important things is security and privacy. And so we use the best of Google's technology to help ensure that as well for our Pinpoint users. All right, now I'm going to jump into the case study so that we can talk about how other journalists around the world have used it. So Maria Ressa from Rappler in the Philippines was one of our very, very first users. And what she uses it for is a bunch of different things. I think at Rappler, they use it also for a notebook, but they're also able to do really quick stories a lot of times. Looking at, for example, here is a collection of CIA documents that were released. It was like, I think over like maybe 30,000 or something like that, and they're able to just really quickly go through and do a story. The Tampa Bay Times is a local reporting outlet in Florida in the US. They actually won a Pulitzer Prize for a series that they did looking at a lot of different documents where there was a factory leaking toxic chemicals into the environment. And they were able to use Pinpoint to go through and look at the records, the pollution records, and compare those to other interviews that they had done. Okay, Ecos Diarios here in Argentina used this when they did over 300 different interviews ahead of an election. They were able to go back into Pinpoint, take those interviews, those transcriptions, and then actually start tagging them and understanding what people were talking about. They were talking about a casino, they were talking about education, and starting to categorize those as well. I think this collection is also available publicly. El Libertador did a story, so there is a disappearance of a young boy that they had covered very regularly for a very long period of time. What they were able to use Pinpoint for is actually uploading all of those stories and then being able to understand the common patterns between those daily reporting. So being able to do the analysis of who are the politicians that were seemingly most often mentioned in these stories and being able to sort of up-level their own work. All right, this story is from Zetland, which is out of Denmark, and they actually won the Kavling Prize, which is the highest journalistic honor there, for a story that actually went back to the 1910 mink trade. And so, as I mentioned, handwriting, very important. And so they were able to use Pinpoint to read a lot of handwriting back in those documents and trace sort of the effects of these 1910 industry actually into today. And they were able to use a lot of the transcription technology for the tools that they did as well. And they said it was really essential to their process, particularly because they had such old documents and such large amounts of documents. Info Amazonia out of Brazil used this actually and said they were investigating indigenous rights on, and we're able to go through and have a whole corpus of data over the process of several months from different audio files, different charts, all types of different media, and being able to put a story and started connecting different companies into what ended up being wrongdoing. And skip ahead here. Rolling Stone did this article too, where they were looking for tracking a alleged war criminal who ended up being a trance DJ in Eastern Europe, who had denied involvement at all. And what actually Pinpoint was particularly useful for is that it showed, like I showed you, that knowledge graph. So it showed the most commonly mentioned people, names, places, etc. And they were able actually then to go to the UN. And because they knew what names they were looking for, they actually were able to find a database the UN had thought was offline, but actually was not. And if they hadn't known those names to search for, they wouldn't have been able to find that data and put together this story. It was actually a finalist for an Emmy Award a couple years ago as well in the US. Suno India, we talked about how important transcription are. A lot of times they are a podcast network out of India. They do a lot of work in remote parts where connectivity is not readily available. So what they do is they actually do the interviews, they upload those audio files into Pinpoint. Those are then transcribed, and they actually have an editor back at home base who's able to take those transcriptions and quickly roll those into different podcasts. I'm going to skip, La Nacion. I love to show this example. It's a little bit older, but I love to show this example because I think it shows that Pinpoint is not just for deep investigations, that you can do kind of quicker hits and sort of that daily journalism work with it as well. The Boston Globe won, I know I'm at time. The Boston Globe did actually a Pulitzer Prize-winning investigation again, where they were connecting documents from a lot of different regions and a lot of different states. So we know that governments don't report things in the same way. Pinpoint can help you organize that data and really bring it together in a cohesive manner. All right, so Pinpoint. Here's an email address, which if you sign up for the tool, you'll get pinpointsupport@google.com. There are real humans behind them. Sometimes it's me, sometimes it's one of my product colleagues as well. It is fee-free. You can go ahead and sign up here at g.co/pinpoint. And then if you would like to access the Gen AI features, we are in testing for them, so please just apply separately for it. But access is pretty quick. We don't have to tell journalists this, but we love your feedback. We really appreciate it. We've really built this in concert with the industry and really look forward